Race is everywhere when it comes to pop culture. It's everywhere, let's be honest. But here's the thing. Nobody wants to talk about it. Let's be real, you guys. No one wants to talk about it because nobody wants to get Chris Harrison, right? For lack of a better word. Well, guess what? This is Cancel Me, Baby. And we can't get canceled because we are going to talk about it, bitches. This is the show where we air it out. And I'm going to be upfront. I'm a little nervous. Like, I may or may not be sweating, okay? This is not my wheelhouse. But with that said, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it. So today I have a pretty kick-ass guest. And she is not shy when it comes to this. And guess what? She hails from the UK. So we are getting international today. And I'm so excited to get her input. Now, she's built a brand and a following pretty quickly because she's not having the group think. She speaks from the heart. She speaks her mind. And you know, we are all about that. Okay. So please help me in welcoming this lovely lady. She looks beautiful. She goes by Different Voice X, but you guys get a little extra today because her name is Ada. That's her name, Ada. But we like her stage name. I like that. Like keep it a little bit of a mystery. I like that. So welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Tell us before we get into it, because like I said, you started this platform, a little bit about your background and why you started Different Voice X.
Yes, so like you said, I've never really had that kind of mentality where the group mentality is my mentality, whatever it be, whether it's women, whether it's female, whether it's African kind of thing. And it doesn't mean that I don't like to sort of be in a group or identify with a group. It just means that I always like to make sure that my thoughts are mine. Why is no one saying something different? And that's when I started to speak against the main narrative. And then as I was doing what I'm doing, I connected with so many people who actually have the same mentality as me anyway. So
well, I actually found you because I found Africa Brooke and I loved her essay, her letter she wrote, which was why I left the cult of wokeness. And she talks a lot about what you talk about. So I wanted to talk about this up front. I watched one of your YouTube videos where you talk about microaggressions. And one of them is, you know, you see a Black man and you clutch your purse, right? So I know that these things obviously exist. And you know that people are going to judge right away and be like, oh, here we have, you know, an Uncle Tom and an Uncle Tom enabler. So I want to make it clear to people off the bat, don't even try it, because neither of us are saying that the oppression doesn't exist, that racism doesn't exist. I have not talked with one Black person who's like, no, I've never experienced racism. Like, of course.
I think that's a very, very important point to make, because just because I speak how I speak, and just because I say that, let's say, oppression hasn't brought me down, which, by the way, I cannot really say I've ever been oppressed. That's just my own sort of mentality. I'm sorry, because I wasn't born in the UK. I was born in Nigeria, in Africa. Okay. You know, I've been around. I've spoken to so many people, and with all due respect, I have met with real oppression, and I don't have sort of the guts to say that I've been oppressed, because I've had a really good life in the UK, even in my country. I have been through what you've been through, but it doesn't mean that I've had the same mentality or I've formed the same mindset or outcomes from the same situations you've been through. And that's what I'm trying to do, just bring a different perspective to things.
What is an example of a time when you were met with racism?
Oh, from comments, you know, about my skin color.
Merely how you look.
Exactly. I was speaking about microaggression, you know, I've experienced what other people have experienced, you know, maybe being followed around, you know, the everything I can relate to. But really it's more things like when you're kids as well.
So today we're going to get into the pop culture of things, because I know you have, like, you're definitely opinionated. You know, pop culture is my baby with my experience working in Hollywood. I think an issue that's happening now is the word racist is being thrown around. And it's like, well, what counts and what doesn't? So we're going to talk today about Chris Harrison. We're going to get into it about Sharon Osbourne. People even advising me with this show. They're like, don't go there, Taylor. Don't go there. You don't want to get in hot water and be called racist for something you did or didn't say. So it's all, I feel like, a slippery slope. And is that helping? Because I feel like people aren't going to want to openly discuss it and get labeled the wrong way.
I think people just need to be free, like, and stop being afraid of speaking out. I have a big problem with calling things racist that are not racist. Then when people actually, let's say, face genuine racism, how can you separate it when everything is racist?
For those of you listening, we went over a few topics that we were going to discuss today. And this one, it was just on my mind. So I was going to throw it your way. And I saw you had posted about it to your Instagram. So I was like, she's already ready for this one, because you talked about women being oppressed as well, which is something I'm really vocal about on this show, because I hate the women are by nature innately victims, and that's it. I hate that, right? So with that said, people are really, I just wanted to get your take on this before we hop into some of the other stuff. The WAP performance at the Grammys. Now, people are losing their minds because they're saying, how is this accepted when, you know, Dr. Seuss is canceled? And I only watch the Grammys to watch that performance. Like, I personally love it. I feel like I'm really, really passionate about the fact that women can be independent and strong and smart and also sexy. Like, hey, if they want to show their labia, then I mean, by all means, that is your decision. What was your take on that whole thing? Because I saw that you had posted about it.
I just think that there's a mockery at the moment for things. Look, I'm not against women being, let's say, free with their bodies and things like that, but a lot of these things are explicit. Why, for example, does freedom equate to the more explicit you can be? If that's freedom to you, that's fine. But sometimes I feel like the traditional values, like being discreet, being gentle, or being, you know, is mocked as well. So we can't have it both ways. I mean, there was an incident in the UK where a woman was found dead, and the media used this to do a men versus women thing again and say that women are victims and women are not being protected by men and things like that. Well, I thought women should be equal to men. So why are we seeking protection from men? Whereas I thought equality means that, you know, you have equal standing in society, and however men are, you are, kind of thing. So I am not a big believer in the over-sexualization of women in the media, of Black women in the media. For me, I don't feel that it should be preached as being empowerment. And the reason I say that as well, from a personal standpoint, is because I used to have that lifestyle as well. You know, what's promoted in the media, the freedom, you know, you can do whatever you want with your body, you can behave like men and things like that. And personally, for me, anyone else can have their own experience, but it's not what women were made for, in my opinion. We're made to love one man, we were made to care, we were made to nurture. And this sort of brazen way that many women are in society, I don't think personally is healthy for them.
Something that was interesting that you just said is how you used to have that lifestyle. Now, I had a guest on a few months ago. I don't know if you're familiar with Joy Vila, but
Yes.
she said, okay, so Joy said the same thing. I think she actually used to be a stripper, and she pretty much said the same thing as you. And she posted something, I actually saw it this morning, that said something to the effect of, you know, on the surface, it seems like this is freedom, but really this is kind of like enslavement of women, and like the whole idea of like promoting prostitution, etc. So talk to me about, because I personally think that's so fascinating. Like, how do you go from stripper to this? So I know you said you kind of have a little bit of a parallel. So walk me through, how do you get from A to B?
Well, from experience. I mean, I wasn't a stripper, but I was sort of in multiple relationships. Basically, I had that mentality that whatever men can do, I can do. If they want to be with 3 guys, 3 girls, I can be with 3 guys, kind of thing. That independent woman, I don't need a man, I run the show kind of thing. But like I said, personally for me and many of the girls I've spoken to, it's a lonely lifestyle. Women were not built like men. Men are more physical, you know. That's why they can do the stupid things that they do. I have 3 brothers, so I can talk sometimes. But women were not built for that, to be in multiple, let's say, relationships and sleeping around with one guy every night. You know, there's songs about it. You know, I've got a guy for every day of the week. I'm sorry, it's not us. So that's why I feel more women are depressed nowadays, because they're putting on that facade because they feel that's what it means to be a strong woman. But there is strength, in my opinion, in silence. There is strength in, like I said earlier, discretion. But why are these values being taken away?
In my last episode, I talked about how I feel like we're losing sight about the fact that 2 things can be true at the same time. So my personal take, especially like hearing what you have to say, my personal take is, they can be as sexual as men and feel, and still, like, that's kind of what I love about the Cardi B story, is how she is so sexual, but is like a really like ruthless businesswoman. And I love that you can be both, right? So I'm all about that. And I know for me, like, I listen to WAP and it empowers me. And what the twist is, I'm a prude in real life. And I always talk about sex on the show. So I'm like, maybe it's like my alter ego, because I am such a prude, right? So like chastity belt going on right here. But I feel like at the same time, there's truth in what you're saying, which is this doesn't have to be the only way that women are empowered and like put on a pedestal, right? There is something to be said about being stoic, or keeping some things to yourself a little bit too. And I often on the show as well, because I do talk about sexuality a lot, to your point, which I feel like is something that people don't like these days, which is saying men are different than women, right? And I talk about this a lot, but they are built differently, like on a sexual level from evolution. Men were built to sort of like spread their seed, keep their bloodline going, have sex with this mug, have sex with anything, where women were like really the nurturers, right? So
yeah,
so there is like a duality in the fact that yes, we're built differently, and also like, if that's a way that women want to be seen equal as men, that can be true too. And I feel like we've become so polarized. It's like no one can acknowledge both things are true,
This is my point. Balance. Like I said earlier, I don't mind whatever people want to do, but the problem I see with the race thing, with the sexuality thing, with the gender thing, is that what has been is they're trying to erase it. So they're saying that they want equality, whatever sphere that is, but it's actually not equality that we are seeking. I've said it before on my platform. If people follow me, there are many things that Black people are showing that it's not actually equality they want, it's annihilation of white people in some things. Please get what I'm saying, viewers. There's some things that I've seen that is not showing equality with the whole LGBT thing. There's some things that I've seen that is not equality they seem to be seeking. It's like the annihilation, almost the reversal. And maybe we can say that it's like understandable because maybe they've been oppressed, let's use this word, for such a long time. And it's almost, the other groups turn, I've been thinking about why that is, because both can coexist at the same time. If women, like you said, feel empowered being sexual, that's great, but also don't demonize women who don't feel that way. I think that's where I'm having issues, if that makes sense.
Yep. I did a whole episode based on this entire thing, especially what you're talking about with like trans and LGBTQ community. It's like, if you want to express yourself that way, absolutely. But I don't think we have to erase the traditional gender roles either. You and I are both very vocal about being a woman and innately being a victim, which you and I hate that narrative. And you're the double whammy, because you're talking about Black women, right? Being victims, which I know you don't like that narrative. So for people who think that you are anti-Black because you stand up for this narrative. What are they getting wrong? Why isn't that true?
Because that has been our narrative for such a long time. So whatever you say outside of that, I understand them, because it seems like I am not understanding the fight that we've been through. But then I always say, but I want you to understand who we are today and how much we have actually achieved today. And I think it's that clash. They feel I'm not seeing their pain, and I feel they're not seeing or understanding our victories and our successes. And I always equate it to, anyone who's been abused or who's had like traumatic events in their life. And what happens is that then becomes part of who they are. It's not separate anymore. It's not just an event that's happened. It's them. It's who they are. I am an abuse victim. It's not I experienced abuse. It's I am this. I am that. So when you speak against that, it seems like you're speaking against who they are. And obviously that hurts.
I've been super vocal about the women victimhood narrative. Like when I was in Hollywood, I would cover, so I used to be a red carpet reporter. I would cover so many like women conferences, right? And they would push this, they would bring together celebrities and CEOs, and they would constantly push this narrative that like, we're so oppressed and we need to smash the ceiling and fight the patriarchy and yada, yada. And I had an interesting conversation with the CEO there. And I said to her, if women want equality so bad, why are they cheering to each other about this? Like, where are the men? Like, to me, it's like, throw me in with the men. Like, I'm not a victim. Like, throw me in. And she said to me, she's like, first of all, I totally agree. And you're the first person saying this. And she's like, second of all, when I say this, I get met with a lot of flack and argument from other female CEOs or business. It's like, you can't say that, right?
We are not victims. Women are strong. We just have a different kind of strength. The unfortunate thing about our culture and our society nowadays, why can't we accept the different things that we can bring to the table? I don't want to bring the same thing as a man. I'm a woman. Maybe that's why there's this sort of weird competition going on, in society between men and women. It's like we can't sort of complement each other anymore. It's like one must be higher than the other, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Being a white woman and being a woman, it's like, it's not the same as what you're saying, that history of oppression, obviously with Black people, that's, that's not what I'm saying. However, with the parallels, like what you talk about, the white vengeance and hate, it's like this notion of like eradicating white people. And it's almost like with women, like wanting to eradicate men. It's like, that's where I see a little bit of a parallel there.
Yeah.
So let's get into the royals, because you are there on the UK soil and it's a huge deal here. And you might be like, why do you guys care so much? Like, first of all, the Meghan and Harry interview got 17 million views. And I think the Grammys got like 8 million and the Golden Globes got 6 million. So that's where people's priorities are at. Do you find it, first of all, like, do you find it fascinating that people here are so obsessed? Are you like, why do you guys care?
No, because of the era that we're in. And obviously it has everything in there, right? You have the women role, the race thing there, you have the royal family. So I think whatever the media drives is what people care about. And like you said, 17, Oprah, for goodness sake, she's the queen of television. So of course you guys are going to get involved with that.
Oh my God, I know. And I've met her, and let me tell you, there is a reason she is so successful, because she touches your hand and just looks into your eyes. And I'm like, I am on another planet right now. Like, you're taking me to the fifth dimension. I'll never forget one time I was on a red carpet, the velvet ropes, and my hand was on the little thing, and she was just talking to someone and had her hand on mine. And I was like, oh
my gosh, check you out. So she's really warm. She has that warmth.
100%. And I'm like, that's why she's so successful. Like, I get it. So let's fill people in on this before, because I definitely want your input. So guys, I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version because I talked about this in my last episode, but Meghan and Harry did their big interview, right? And Meghan Markle talked a lot about, how she was like a prisoner, which a lot of it I can imagine, had no freedoms, had terrible mental health struggles, and experienced racism. Says there was a conversation behind the scenes with someone in the family being concerned with how dark her child's skin would be. So Piers Morgan, who's a big personality over in the UK, he's had like beef with Meghan Markle. I'm not going to get into it, but basically on his show, he was like, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying any of it. Which in my opinion, like if he doesn't believe her, he doesn't believe her. Like, okay, it's his opinion, right? So Sharon Osbourne was on the talk. And she was basically defending Piers Morgan because he came under huge fire because people were saying that was racist, the fact that he was putting down a Black woman talking about mental health struggles and race. So Sharon Osbourne is on the talk going, this is my friend, it's his free speech. And her co-host, Cheryl Underwood, who's a Black woman, was saying to her, basically saying what he said was racist. So Cheryl's like, okay, explicitly tell me what he said that was racist. And Cheryl couldn't name anything. She basically just said, like I said, the whole fact that he, created that environment of putting down a Black woman in and of itself is. So now the talk is on a hiatus. They're investigating, and Cheryl Osbourne basically, came out with this apology, like basically saying, I'm mortified because I love the Black community. I'm mortified even at the thought of being associated with being a racist. So this is where it gets really tricky because it's like, she's defending her friend who, in my opinion, wasn't being racist. So I mean, when you saw this, what was your immediate take?
Piers Morgan is outspoken, but what he said about Meghan Markle was not racist. And this makes me think what we were saying earlier about this definition of racism in the first place. Look, racism doesn't just mean when a Black person feels bad, because then every single day for any single thing, we will experience racism. And that's how I feel racism is being translated into these days. Oh, you hurt our feelings. And like I said, I personally may not have spoken the way he spoke about Meghan Markle, because at the end of the day, if someone is saying that they experience mental health issues, you should actually, not put that down, if that makes sense. You might think she's been a crybaby or whatever, but she's saying she experienced something. And I think you have to be careful with that. But in terms of him being racist because he was saying that against them, of course he wasn't, because he said that against many white people as well. So why don't we say anything about that? Why is it because she's Black, then automatically that element of racism is added? Now, in saying that, he actually quit as well. I'm not sure if you... And I was a bit disappointed with that, because if you are going to speak out, and if you are going to speak out in the name of freedom of speech, then I can get if you're fired, but in my thought, it's like the woke mob, that's one for them, and this is what we don't want. They feel that all they need to do is scream enough and they can get what they want. I think he's doing other things and that's fine, but the message for that wasn't the best for me, because if you're advocating for freedom of speech, you have to go all the way and stick your grounds wherever you are until you're fired or whatever, which is something else. Sharon Osbourne as well, she backtracked as well, and again, this is the kind of society that we're heading into. I didn't buy her apology in the sense of, I believe she still thinks that Piers was not being racist. But her PR team or whatever has said, look, this isn't a good image. And that's all we care about now. What looks good? What is a good image? Like she said, I think you mentioned, I don't want to seem racist. We need to be who we are. If you think I'm oppressed and I'm not oppressed, what you say to me doesn't matter. If you know you're not a racist, what I say to you doesn't matter. So it's really unfortunate how we are now. You just scream enough, or you just say the right words, and then people backtrack and back down. I'm not racist, or I'm not this, and it's crazy.
it just comes off to me as totally disingenuous. And I think that it goes for the Chris Harrison thing, which I want to get into, because in both of these cases, these people were super passionate and fired up. And then 20 seconds later, because the mob got upset, they had a lobotomy and they're they have a new, like, that's where, you know, I really do wonder. I wonder what would have happened if Sharon Osbourne went, you know what, guys? I stand by my friend. I don't think that he was being racist. Like, I really wonder what would happen if, God forbid, these people didn't cave to the mob.
You know, and it's like, just don't be afraid. Like, what? Like, I know it's easy for me to speak because I don't have all the things they have, or I've not had spent decades building what they have today. I understand. So they have things to preserve, but what do you really have to lose to to stick up for yours? Isn't that more valuable? I mean, this is the mindset I have now. And like you said, you know, I started off this page just as a rant. I had, you know, 10 people following me, and then it grew, and then I started to get pushback even with what I was saying. And I was like, you know what? No, I know who I am. I know why I started this page. And the first person I'm going to owe my voice to is myself before anyone else. So what is with this? I don't want to be a racist or homophobic, but by doing that, by coming back out with these false apologies, you're somehow indirectly admitting that what you did was actually what the woke mob said you did in the first place.
I completely agree. And that's why, like, even with this show, I'm all about, you know, standing by what you say, because that's what it is. Like, why do people always have to, like you said, backpedal or defend themselves or be like, no, I didn't really mean it. Listen, if you said something and you know you're not a racist, like you're homophobic or transphobic or whatever it is. I mean, there are the exceptions, of course, or people don't think they are, and they clearly are.
I mean,
but,
yeah.
you know, but in a lot of these cases, you know,
Yeah.
what is that accomplishing?
Exactly.
This parallels the whole Bachelor thing. So this was a huge story over here. And to be honest with you, again, it's something that people advise me, whether it be friends or people in the business advise me, like, Taylor, don't go near this Chris Harrison thing on your show because the mob will come after you and you won't be able to say the right thing. Well, we're going to talk about it right now. So again, to give you guys a little bit of a cliff notes, I'm sure you've heard about it. Chris Harrison was the host of The Bachelor for all the 20 plus years it was on. I think he was an executive producer, right? So he had a sit down interview with Rachel Lindsay, who was the first Black Bachelorette. I've also met Rachel Lindsay. She's a badass bitch. Really, really enjoy meeting her. And they were talking about the first Black Bachelor who's on now. And there's a contestant who had controversy, a white girl, because they found photos of her at like an old South antebellum party, right? So basically, and she was like totally silent. Everyone's like, where is this girl? Is she going to come out with an apology? What's going on? So Rachel Lindsay is talking about it with Chris Harrison. And Chris Harrison, granted, was he a dick about it and like arrogant and kind of railroading her? Yes. But he basically says, you know, give this girl some grace, let her come out with an apology on her own. Don't cancel her so quick. The woke mob is so out of control, etc. The part that I think where he got it wrong is where he says to Rachel Lindsay, you know, Rachel, like, who are we to judge her? Who are we to judge her? And I could see where in her mind as a Black woman, she's like, well, me, because I'm a Black woman and I see this white girl going to an old South party, right? Because when Chris Harrison's like, kind of downplaying it, Rachel Lindsay kind of like puts him on the spot, which good for her. And she's like, where would I be at that party? But do I think the whole mob's backlash, I mean, you guys, it blew up. Like, he ended up stepping away from the show. He's like indefinitely done with the show. They hired somebody new. He also had to talk about how racist and apologetic and how he had to educate himself he was. So my question for you, different voice, I love that you go by this, could you see where Rachel Lindsay was justified in her head of being like, I'm sorry, what? Like in the moment of being like defensive or feeling like he was overstepping?
He represents the show, basically. So she was justified in sort of asking him and sort of trying to get an explanation from him. And yeah, so I understand her holding him to account, but I also understand him as well. I think the bombarding of, well, we cancel her and you're cancelled because you're having your opinion. I think that's where we have to be careful as well. And one thing for me is, because he mentioned, well, maybe at the time it wasn't so bad. I don't think that's a good enough excuse. But what I think is, the reason why many people cancel so easily is because they think that they are so perfect or they are beyond doing anything stupid themselves. But that's the main thing I got from this. She did something maybe potentially stupid 3 years ago, and they basically want to ruin her life. And we've seen this in so many other things. And the problem with the woke mob is they see themselves as so, holy and pure and unable to do anything that anyone can figure out. And that's why they come in mobs, because you can't get them individually, and that's why they cancel you so easily. But what goes around comes around, and if we keep up this culture of digging, because that's what happened, because they found out these photos, I think they were digging into so many other things into this poor girl's life. And if you carry on this culture of constantly trying to find, because that's what it is now, it's not just trying to hold people accountable anymore, Taylor. It's trying to find and dig. And I want to prove that this is who you are. Because maybe they have other issues in their life that they have no control over. But to cancel you, that I can control. So that's why the cancel culture is so addictive, instead of using that same energy maybe to build their own lives up or do something good for themselves. So
it's just, to me, I mean, and I've talked about this as well, that's the part I don't like about it. And I've said this in one episode, which is, who is that perfect? Number one, this climate doesn't give any room for growth or it's like, what, you didn't think this, 15 years ago, we're going to start going into the woodwork. And that's, it's bullying. And so, what's interesting about this is, yet again, I almost feel like both things can be true when it comes to this Bachelor situation. Like, what I'm getting from you is, should he have been canceled, career destroyed? Because let's be honest, who's going to hire him now, right? Probably no one. You're saying necessarily no. I don't know that he should be canceled, but was she justified in being in feeling defensive and feeling like, I'm totally allowed to judge this white girl who went to an Old South party? Like, both things can be true.
I feel so. And I just feel we've lost that, we don't give people opportunities anymore or grace anymore. Once guilty, you're labeled and branded as a bad person. And it's so stupid, in my opinion. Forgive me, because you forget that people have different dimensions to them. We always say, educate yourself, educate yourself. Well, we're constantly being educated anyway. We're in 2021. What can be okay today might not be okay tomorrow. And we need to make room for that as well. But I actually think there's no hope. People are so bored, maybe, or so evil somehow, that because I just don't understand how someone just feels, actually, I'm going to dig up some dirt about you to prove how racist you are. And it's also maybe a jealousy thing, in a sense, because they see someone maybe doing well, they see someone shining, they see someone winning, and you just need to do the three main buzzwords and that person's life is completely destroyed. Racist, homophobic, transphobic. Those are the best buzzwords now. Or maybe he rapes me, men and women kind of thing, rape as well. And you're guilty. It's not innocent until proved you're guilty. Once those four main things are said about you. And it's quite benign, actually. It's quite dark.
And you know what? It goes back into what I was saying earlier, which is, it's making nobody want to talk about it. I mean, look at what happened with Sharon Osbourne. Look at what happened with Chris Harrison. And I know for me, like, everyone I've talked to in the Black community, they're like, let's talk about it. But there's this environment being created where people are like, I'm petrified. And that, in my opinion, how is that helping? People are just going to get more, like, they're going to get scared and resentful. and in their own thoughts, not knowing how they're going to walk on eggshells, not knowing how to talk about anything. And I just feel like that doesn't help. Going off of this actually is the digital blackface. Okay. So I had a friend say to me, apparently now using Black people in GIFs or in memes is inappropriate. There's actually a piece from 2017 in Vogue that talks about this. And you actually posted on your story a piece about, you know, people saying this about Oprah memes from the big interview, right? That is considered digital blackface because it's allowing white people to use Black people in the capacity that they are comfortable with, which, you know, this is something I've talked about as well, which I want to get your take on because, you know, I've had conversations with friends who talk about, say, like the Kardashians, right? Where they'll use Black culture to their advantage, whether it be, you know, style or hairstyle or whatever it is, but without really getting in the nitty gritty of things and biases and prejudices that Black people deal with that they don't have to, right? So I feel like this goes into that because it's like, right, well, you're using Black people to express yourself without really knowing what we go through. So when you saw this, especially the Oprah memes one, you know, what do you think? Is that justified as well, or?
Okay, let's talk first about this whole appropriation of Black culture without, you know, knowing the nitty-gritty or knowing what we go through. Let me make this as clear as possible. Being Black is not going through nitty-gritties. Being Black is not always going through something. This is my point, because once we establish that, then there is no, well, she is using my culture and she doesn't feel the burden. I don't know if you saw the white identities piece as well that was flying around, and they were basically classing white people in different categories, and one of them was a white voyeurist that loved the Black culture. Yeah.
Yep.
They love the Black culture. They don't take the Black burden. Being Black is not a burden, for goodness sake. And number two, nothing belongs to Black people or white people in terms of personality, in terms of characteristic, physical characteristic. So a big bum, a big ass is not a Black, is not owned by Black people, okay? What else? A certain curly hair, whatever, is not owned by Black people. You know, a tan skin is not owned by Black people. So apart from the physical, like my skin color is Black, I understand that. Maybe don't paint your face Black, you know, which not white people do. But this whole thing of, well, they're copying my hairstyle, they're darkening their skin to be more tanned, they're getting butt fillers, lip fillers. These are not owned by one race. The blackface, you know, especially when it comes to celebrities, if you're, like I put on my story, if you're a celebrity, we are going to meme you, okay? You're going to become a GIF. Number two, Black people are not the only ones being used as GIFs, are they? Are we? Are we the only ones being used as GIFs? I see white people being used as GIFs. I see Chinese people being used as GIFs. What the hell is the problem? And if we are not used as GIFs, if you have white people, Asian people, what we gonna say? Oh, they're so racist. They don't use us as GIFs. You use us as GIFs? They're so racist. They use us as GIFs. I don't know what to say anymore.
I'm going to get into that as my closing thing. We're like totally on the same page. What would you say, you know, because in these pieces, the argument I saw was, you know, they're stereotyping and using Black, whether it be like Real Housewives or Oprah, whoever it is, as people who have big personalities or are loud or are sassy. I think I saw, and I used air quotes for those of you listening, in one piece. What's your take on that?
These are not the only kind of gifts of Black people that are being used. There's ones that I use myself, of crying, of sad, of, so why are they highlighting the ones that are being used as sassy or whatever? That's their interpretation. There is a certain stereotype. Who knows why? Maybe it's the media, maybe it's the sassy Cardi B, because most of the entertainers in the pop culture is, when they are Black, do have that kind of queenish black girls, it's not uncommon for us to call each other queens and this and that, divas. That's why I personally used to have a lot of problems with black girls growing up here, because I didn't have that. I'm very straight to the point. I'm quite bitey when I speak, but I'm not a certain way. And I used to get teased about that, and I used to get bullied about it. So I used to get teased because I used to get called a fake black girl. I used to get called a white girl because I didn't have that, should I say, big personality, whatever you want to call it. I wasn't so loud and out there. And at that time, many of the black girls were.
That's actually something that Joy brought up when she was on my show, because she's half black. She's Latina as well, and she's white. And she said, it's like always something. I'm never white enough. I'm never black enough. I'm never, which reminded me of what you just said. And I'm sure you get people on your platform who still say that.
This is real oppression for me, if I can be as honest as I can with you, because you as a white person, for example, if you have a certain behavior, it's never linked back to your skin color with your race.
I was just going to say that. You don't hear white people going, you're not white enough, you're not this enough, right?
It's crazy. And I never hear that from a white person. I wish I did. But these kind of comments I hear from a black person. My most recent one was, I can't talk about racism because I haven't experienced racism as an American. But racism is racism, and it's like they find so many ways to exclude you and disqualify you from having a voice. Just because I didn't have the same reaction as you doesn't mean I didn't go through what you went through, and this is real oppression for me. I cannot be me. If I'm loud for a black girl. If I'm quiet for a black girl. I can't just be Ada, my real name. I can't be me. And that's the real, if we want to talk about oppression, that's the real prison. That's not whatever else they say.
Well, what I was going to say was, many of my audience is in the US, and I'm thinking to myself, they could very well think, well, we have a different history here. We have a different history. Who is she to speak on all of this?
That's why we thrive as a human race, because we can get, we can pick from different perspectives. And I always say, why can I not add and help you somehow? It doesn't mean I tell you how to feel or tell you what to feel, but why can't I add to you or add things to help you? And this whole thing where black people, and I will speak about black people because it needs to be talked about, this whole thing of disqualifying people because you think that they cannot add to the discussion is completely wrong. Stop telling people they're not black or they're white, so they can't talk. They're British, they can't talk. They're a man, they can't. This is complete stupidity. You can disagree with their perspective. Maybe it's not their place to tell you what to believe about what you went through, but I'm telling you, they can add to the discussion anyhow. And this is my purpose with Different Voice.
Of course, I can't speak for everyone. I can't speak for all white people. Can't speak for all women. I feel like there's a sort of, like, if you want to call it actually, like the voyeurism, right? I feel like people are thinking, okay, we want to help, we want to be involved, but we don't want to be, singing a rap song or having our hair a certain way and be, deemed appropriating. I've had multiple friends, and I'm not trying to be like a woe is me, but I've had multiple friends who have spoken out when, the riots were happening over the summer in a decent, balanced way, and they got backlash. So they were like, you know what, I tried and I'm not going to speak about it anymore. Because I feel like people feel like they can't win, if I'm being honest, because it's not enough, or it's not the right way, or they're appropriating, or if you don't say anything, then you're in trouble and you're in hot water. So as a wrap up, what would your words of, I guess, advice or your thoughts on that would be?
I would say two things. The main point is to be true to you. So why do I say that? And I love what you said. The thing is, many white people, let me be specific, may not really want to speak about all these things, the race thing, but they feel the climate is forcing them to speak. You don't need to speak. if you don't feel it in your heart to speak. That's one thing. But the second thing, which is more important for me because I'm speaking, is do not allow anybody to disqualify you to speak, because you are the one who is in charge of your voice. What do we have to lose to, give our opinion? And if you really care about, let's say, white people that try to help in this movement, if they really care, then they would really speak and not see Black people as some kind of scary, if I speak, I'm gonna lose everything. No, then actually, in a way, that's kind of racist, isn't it? Because you're seeing us as, so be careful, be true to who you are, your voice, your opinion, speak.
That's how I feel. And like I said, it's seeped into pop culture and my world in a way where you can't deny it and you can't just act like it's not happening. I'm sweating a little bit less now. And I had so much, you're so much fun to talk to. Hopefully it would be so much fun to meet in person once all this crazy is over. I feel like that we would have a good time. Follow Different Voice X. I'll put her info up. And thank you again for having this dialogue with me today. It meant a lot. So I'm excited to get it up.
Thank you.